When news broke that Yu Menglong had fallen from a Beijing high-rise, fans were told it was nothing more than an accident fueled by alcohol. Case closed. But almost instantly, whispers of something darker began to swirl, and what started as a simple tragedy soon spiraled into one of the most shocking scandals the Chinese entertainment industry has ever seen. Anonymous accounts claimed there was proof of humiliation, that a director had delivered evidence showing Yu was surrounded, degraded, and silenced long before his body ever hit the ground. 11 people allegedly took part. A missing farewell letter, a mother who supposedly vanished, and a forbidden video that no one can find, but everyone insists exists. Each rumor added fuel to a fire that official denials couldn't put out. Tonight on Criminal Tracks, we expose the conspiracy storm behind Yu Menglong's final moments. Subscribe now, because the real story is far from over. On the night before his death, Yu Menglong was not performing on a stage or preparing for a new role. Instead, he was reportedly sharing dinner with a small group of friends inside one of Beijing's most exclusive residential complexes. Those who followed his career knew him as a familiar face from dramas like Go Princess Go and Eternal Love, a polished idol who had built a reputation on charm and boyish charisma. Yet, in that private setting, the atmosphere was different. According to local summaries that surfaced in the days after, drinks flowed freely, and Yu became increasingly intoxicated. At some point, he locked himself in a bedroom, and by the following morning, his body was discovered below the Sunshine Upper East Tower in Chaoyang District. Police arrived quickly, and the scene was cordoned off. But within hours, the official story was already taking shape. The first statements from authorities and from Yu's own studio were strikingly uniform. Both attributed his fall to heavy drinking and insisted that no criminal activity was suspected. It was the kind of phrasing often used in Chinese celebrity tragedies, closing the door on speculation before it had the chance to spread. Yet, instead of silencing discussion, the brevity of these announcements only encouraged the public to fill in the blanks themselves. People wanted to know what really happened during those hours inside the apartment, why Yu would isolate himself, and whether anyone else in the room had seen warning signs. Fueling the unease was the story of a final message. Media outlets across Asia carried reports that Yu had sent a text to his mother not long before his death. The contents were described as cryptic, mentioning pressure and dirty money, but no screenshot or verified copy was ever released. Neither the family nor officials confirmed the text's authenticity, but it became a flashpoint online. To many, it was a sign that Yu had been carrying a burden far heavier than public appearances ever revealed. To others, it was nothing more than an unverified rumor that gained traction because it hinted at hidden scandals. As speculation swirled, authorities in Beijing were not content to let online chatter spiral out of control. Within 2 weeks, police announced the detention of 3 women accused of fabricating and spreading false information about the case. The details of their supposed fabrications included stories of abuse and humiliation that preceded the fall, narratives that police insisted had no basis in fact. These arrests were meant to serve as a warning. Spreading unverified claims about Yu's death would not be tolerated. In China's tightly controlled media landscape, this kind of enforcement is not unusual, but it also has a paradoxical effect. The very act of detaining rumor-mongers made many fans believe there must be something worth hiding. Otherwise, why would the state react so aggressively? At the same time, names of other celebrities began to surface in the whirlwind of discussion. Actor Gao Taiyu found himself drawn into the storm when online posts accused him of being at the scene on the night Yu died. Gao swiftly issued a lawyer's statement, firmly denying any involvement and filing a report with police to protect his reputation. Actress Irene Song, who had worked with Yu in the past, faced similar accusations. Her team released a statement declaring that she had nothing to do with the tragedy and warning against malicious speculation. These public denials underscored how quickly the story had moved beyond Yu himself. In the court of internet opinion, guilt was being assigned without evidence, leaving reputations hanging in the balance. The official version, however, remained stubbornly consistent. Authorities repeated that Yu's death was the result of alcohol and a fall, not an attack or conspiracy. The studio's message urged fans to mourn respectfully and to avoid spreading baseless stories. Funeral arrangements were handled with speed, which some saw as evidence of normal procedure and others interpreted as a sign of hasty cover-up. The lack of a publicly available autopsy report added to the sense of mystery. In many countries, details such as toxicology results might eventually be shared, but in this case, there was nothing beyond the initial accident ruling. For Yu's fans, the gap between what was said officially and what was whispered online created a kind of emotional vacuum. He had been a rising star whose career, while not without challenges, still held promise. To imagine that his life ended because of an alcohol-fueled misstep on an ordinary night felt unsatisfying, almost insulting to his legacy. People wanted more, and in searching for more, they amplified fragments of information until they became entire narratives. What began as a straightforward police report became the foundation for something much larger, a collective attempt to reconstruct Yu's final hours in a way that gave meaning to his sudden absence. In those first days, before the most extreme rumors took hold, the story balanced on the edge between accident and suspicion. The known facts were simple. Yu went to dinner, he drank, he locked himself away, and by morning, he was gone. The police said there was no foul play, and the studio echoed their words. Yet the silence around the details left open endless possibilities. And in that silence, a storm was brewing. The silence created a vacuum, and in that vacuum, the most sensational stories began to take hold. Within days of the first official announcements, claims started to circulate that Yu Menglong's fall had not been a random accident, but part of a carefully orchestrated plan. The phrase that would soon dominate online discussions was that Yu's humiliation was planned from the start. The seed of this rumor came from posts that claimed a prominent director had delivered proof, supposedly handing over video evidence that revealed Yu was not only with friends that night, but was surrounded, manipulated, and degraded before his fall. These posts spread like wildfire across social platforms, amplified by accounts that thrived on mystery and scandal. The most gripping detail repeated again and again was the mention of a video. Some described it as CCTV footage from the Sunshine Upper East complex. Others swore it came from a peephole camera or even from a staff member who secretly filmed what happened inside. What united these different versions was the claim that there were 11 people in the room with Yu, and that they took turns humiliating him in ways that went far beyond drunken mockery. The number alone was shocking. 11 was large enough to suggest a coordinated act, not a spontaneous fight among friends. Whether true or not, the narrative was irresistible to an audience already suspicious of the official story. Another strand of rumor focused on Yu's body and the possibility that he was already dead before the fall. Online threads speculated that his corpse was moved from one location to another, with some insisting he had been at Beijing's Bulgari Hotel earlier that evening, before being transferred to Sunshine Upper East. A dramatic detail claimed that his abdomen had been cut open to retrieve a hidden USB drive containing sensitive information. This theory sounded more like the plot of a thriller than the circumstances of a young actor's death. Yet it gained traction because it fed into broader fears about surveillance, secrets, and power plays in the entertainment industry. Adding fuel to the fire were whispers about a farewell letter. Unlike the text message reported by some outlets, the so-called letter was described as a more elaborate confession. According to those who circulated the claim, Yu had written down names of powerful figures and alluded to forces that were pushing him into a corner. No copy of this letter ever surfaced in reliable media, yet the rumor had staying power because it fit the narrative of a man silenced by those who feared exposure. Every denial, every official takedown of a post mentioning the letter only convinced more people that something important was being hidden. One of the most unsettling rumors involved Yu's mother. At the height of speculation, posts began appearing that she had been detained or had disappeared entirely. The implication was that she might have tried to speak out or resist the narrative being imposed on her son's death. Beijing police eventually identified this as a fabricated rumor and detained the woman who had spread it, but the damage was already done. For many followers, the idea that his mother had vanished was too symbolic to ignore. It reinforced the belief that powerful interests were working behind the scenes to silence anyone who might tell the real story. Even photographs and videos from Yu's own social media became fodder for conspiracy. A blurry selfie he had once shared resurfaced, with online users claiming they could see a reflection in the background, showing someone bound and gagged. Others claimed to see shadows of multiple figures, turning what might have been a normal snapshot into a supposed clue. This practice of reinterpreting old content is common when celebrities die young, and in Yu's case, it added another layer of eerie mystery that kept people scrolling and sharing. As these theories spread, they intersected with the reputations of other actors. Gao Taiyu and Iraine Song were pulled into the storm not because of any official statements, but because their names appeared in rumor threads. Accusations that they were present at the dinner or even participants in Yu's humiliation forced both to issue strong denials. Gao released a lawyer's statement, while Song took the matter to police. Their names became trending topics on Chinese social media, evidence of how quickly guilt could be assigned without evidence. The idea that a circle of entertainers had been involved in Yu's death fed the belief that the entertainment industry itself was rotten, a place where friendships were masks and betrayals were the real currency. For those who distrusted every word of the official narrative, the speed of the funeral and the absence of a public autopsy report became suspicious in themselves. Posts speculated that the body was rushed through examination so that visible wounds would not be scrutinized. Others pointed to funeral makeup, arguing that it concealed injuries inconsistent with a fall. These claims were rarely supported by hard evidence, yet they spread rapidly because they offered a simple way to explain the lack of transparency. In this atmosphere, the mention of a director delivering proof was especially powerful. The director's name was rarely specified, and in some versions of the rumor, it shifted from one insider to another. But the idea that someone from inside the industry had dared to expose what really happened gave the theory an anchor. Fans imagined a whistleblower braving immense risk to reveal how Yu had been treated. In some corners, people speculated that this proof had already been handed to authorities but was being buried. Others imagined that it would one day leak online in full, a forbidden video that would finally vindicate their suspicions. The appeal of these stories lay in how they transformed a senseless accident into a narrative of betrayal, corruption, and cover-up. They gave Yu a role not just as a victim of misfortune, but as a symbol of how vulnerable even celebrities are when they cross the wrong people. Whether it was a USB drive hidden in his body, a secret letter, or a damning video delivered by a director, each rumor painted him as someone who knew too much and paid the price. What made the theories stick was not only their shocking content, but also the environment in which they spread. Posts disappeared almost as soon as they gained traction. Accounts that shared the most extreme claims were suspended or scrubbed. This cycle of appearance and disappearance convinced many that censorship was proof of truth. In their minds, if it wasn't real, why would it be silenced? This belief is common in tightly controlled information environments and ensures that once a rumor takes hold, attempts to suppress it only make it grow stronger. By the end of September, the narrative of an orchestrated humiliation had overtaken the simple story of an accidental fall. Online forums buzzed with speculation about who the 11 people were, who the director might be, and what the supposed proof contained. Fans pored over every available image from the night, re-examined old interviews for signs of hidden messages, and searched for connections between Yu and more powerful figures. The official conclusion that alcohol and a fall were to blame no longer felt satisfying. Instead, the public had built its own alternative history, one where Yu's death was the end point of a plot rather than a tragedy born of chance. These rumors did not exist in isolation. They tapped into broader anxieties about the entertainment world, about politics, and about the way truth can be managed. In that climate, the idea of humiliation being planned from the start felt believable to many because it seemed to confirm what they already feared about power, that it does not hesitate to destroy those who threaten it. Yu Menglong, once celebrated for his roles in lighthearted dramas, had become the central figure in a story darker than any script he ever acted in. And for millions online, that story, however unverified, felt truer than the official record ever could. The more the official line insisted Yu Menglong's death was a simple accident, the more elaborate the alternative stories became. By early October, conspiracy theories had moved far beyond the initial claims of a fall after drinking. Online communities had woven an entire universe of suspicion around his final hours, one that seemed resistant to fact checks, denials, and arrests. At the center of it all was the lingering question: why did the truth feel incomplete? And why did so many people believe that humiliation had been staged from the start? A large part of the answer lies in the speed and style of the response. From the moment police announced there was no criminal suspicion, details were scarce. No toxicology results were shared, no autopsy report was released, and funeral arrangements were handled quickly. To a public used to finding hidden meaning in silence, this absence of information became proof in itself. If everything was so straightforward, people asked, why were authorities not more transparent? Into that silence rushed a flood of rumors that promised answers, even if those answers were far more disturbing than the official story. One of the most extreme claims was that Yu had been subjected to torture before his death. Online posts described wounds inconsistent with a fall, and some even suggested his body had been staged to look like he jumped. These narratives often relied on supposed leaks from anonymous insiders who claimed to have seen the autopsy. None of these sources were ever verified, but the very act of claiming an inside connection made them appear credible to readers eager for explanations. Others repeated the story that his stomach had been cut open to retrieve a hidden USB drive, turning the actor into a character in a political thriller. It was grotesque and implausible, yet its sheer drama captured imaginations. Theories also centered on the role of censorship. Posts about Yu's death were deleted at remarkable speed, with keywords blocked and accounts suspended. For many, this was not seen as an attempt to stop harmful gossip, but as an effort to bury evidence. The crackdown on 3 women accused of spreading false information did little to restore trust. Instead, it convinced many fans that the state was more interested in silencing voices than in seeking justice. Each takedown became a piece of circumstantial evidence, strengthening the conviction that a cover-up was underway. Another theme was the idea of industry betrayal. Fans discussed the possibility that Yu's own colleagues had been complicit, that jealousy or hidden grudges had played a part in his downfall. When Gao Taiyu and Irene Song were forced to defend themselves publicly, it showed how far speculation had gone. Even though both actors denied involvement and took legal action, the damage was done. In the eyes of many, their very need to respond suggested there was something to hide. The entertainment industry became painted as a dark stage, where alliances were fragile and humiliation could be weaponized. Perhaps most telling was how these stories gave Yu a kind of posthumous power. In the official version, he was a man who drank too much and stumbled to his death. A tragic but ordinary accident. In the conspiratorial version, he became a martyr, a figure destroyed by forces too great for him to fight. He was imagined as someone who knew secrets, who perhaps tried to resist, and who was punished for it. This narrative offered a sense of purpose and meaning that the official explanation lacked. Fans clung to it because it elevated his death from senselessness into something symbolic. The public's hunger for scandal was not only about Yu himself, but about broader anxieties. People saw in his death a reflection of how power operates, how truth can be shaped, and how quickly a life can be erased without answers. Stories of USB drives, farewell letters, and videos of mass humiliation resonated because they confirmed what many already feared about corruption and control. Even those who did not fully believe the rumors shared them anyway, fueling a cycle where speculation felt more compelling than certainty. By the time October ended, the distance between fact and rumor had become almost impossible to bridge. The official conclusion remained unchanged: alcohol, a fall, no foul play. Yet online, the dominant story was entirely different. One where Yu had been humiliated, silenced, and discarded. Each time the authorities repeated their stance, the gap only widened. People did not stop believing because the state said otherwise. In fact, the more firmly officials pushed back, the more convinced many became that they were right. The case of Yu Menglong shows how in an age of censorship and secrecy, conspiracy can become stronger than fact. The lack of transparency created fertile ground for every imaginable theory, from hidden drives to orchestrated humiliation. While none of these claims have been substantiated, they persist because they fill an emotional need. They give people someone to blame, a narrative to hold on to, and a reason for grief that feels larger than an accidental fall. In the end, the truth of what happened that night may remain forever uncertain. But what is certain is the power of perception. For millions online, the idea that his humiliation was planned from the start is not just a rumor. It is the story they have chosen to believe, and in their minds, it explains more than any official record ever could. The official verdict says Yu Menglong died after a drunken fall. Yet across the internet, a parallel history has taken shape, one filled with whispered names, vanished evidence, and a humiliation many believe was planned from the start. Whether these stories are pure fabrication or fragments of a truth too dangerous to reveal, they have forever reshaped his legacy. What really happened that night may never be known, but one fact is certain: the silence surrounding his death only deepens suspicion. Stay with Criminal Tracks for more shocking investigations, and subscribe now to uncover the stories others don't dare to tell.